Oh boy, okay, this is going to be a quick video. Greetings, Star Wars fans. Star Wars Skywalker Saga is over. I've seen it 3 times now. I'm super happy with it. No armchair quarterbacking from me. I loved it. So, everybody kind of wants a Graflex. And how do you do that? There's a couple ways you can do it. First of all, is a vintage Graflex worth it as a replica? No, it's not. We're talking about a tube. It's not worth it. I'm sorry. If you are one of those collectors who have to have it, I have this conversation in the Evil Dead groups a lot. I want to build an Ash versus Evil Dead chainsaw. I want to get a home light. That's easier, but that's not accurate. They're actually not original home lights in the show. They're molded. So you'd have to mold one. So if the show didn't use them, you should not either. And if you're going to build one of the new lightsabers from the new series, they didn't use a vintage. They used a Roman's Graflex in the new film. So you can get one from Roman's, and then that's the same. Or you can get one from the TGS, the Graflex shop, the great replica flash gun there. At this stage of the game, building a vintage, it's just they're so few and far between, and they go for so much money. And, so few people get it exactly right with exactly the right parts. Why would you buy a vintage and then go get like a Sloth Furnace card, which is a replica, or get a replica button from Roman's or the Graflex shop? So it's like, if it's not 100% vintage, don't bother. And finding the bubble strip and everything is really hard now, so I don't think it's worth it to do a vintage, especially if it's your first one. Don't do it. If it's your first one, get a fucking replica. Pardon me. So get a replica, and then after you've gotten a few under your belt and you've really done your research and you know the difference between the beer tabs and things like that, then you can start acquiring the vintage parts and then go hunt for a vintage. But even if you find a vintage, it's usually the chrome is damaged or there's some oxidation and there's some issues. So leave those for the photographers. They need them for a lot of displays. So let's be kind to our collectors and stick with the replicas. Now, for everybody else who's not nuts and just wants a halfway decent Graflex, like me, which is weird because I am so anal about replicas in some ways, but not others. So I wish I could rationalize that for you. Great research is the Graflex Addicts Facebook page. Don't engage them. They're crazy. They have problems. They don't people well, but they're fantastic with research. Go in, get all the research that you need, and get out. Try not to engage anybody in conversation. If you post anything, God help you. They'll tear you apart. They're a horrible group of people, but absolutely fantastic as a resource. Just not anybody you want to have over for dinner. So, I did a little bit of research and looked into all the different things and decided what I was acceptable with and what I wasn't acceptable with in terms of mods and things. And I knew I was going to go out and start picking up some replicas. So a few years ago, I decided I was going to start with the original and go A New Hope, Episode 4. And some of us refer to the 2 types of Graflexes as 6s and 7s, which is British for crazy. It's a slang. Oh, it was all 6s and 7s. So that's kind of like a little joke, a little tongue-in-cheek joke. But 6s and 7s refers to the grips on the handles. Episode 3 and 4 has 7 grips with no rivets or screws in them. Episodes 5 and episodes 7, 8, and 9 have 6. Why, you may ask? I fucking don't know. Continuity was not a big thing with George Lucas. So it completely changed from 4 to 5. And then from 5 to 7, they kind of married the 2 versions together and we got kind of a mutant. And that stayed fairly consistent, little tiny mods between here and there. And in the very last movie, they didn't use vintage Graflex at all. They used a Roman's replica for all the parts for the fixed flex. So episode 4, the Luke. Actually, episode 3, if you want to start. Anakin, the skinny flex, which isn't a Graflex at all. Completely scratch made by Lucas for that film. There was no found parts for that series. Everything was molded and replicated. No found objects made their way onto screen. And they may have used some found objects as bases, but everything was molded and replicated. There was no Oh, I found this. Paint it and put it on screen, like the original trilogy. That didn't happen in the prequels. Even the Lady Bic communicator was a mold. So the skinny flex is what it's referred to as in 3. 3 to 4, we have the vintage. 4 to 5, it's still a vintage, but it's modded. It's got 6 now. The box is on the other side. It's got 2 activator switches, etc., etc. And then in 7, it mutates back into sort of like a marriage of the original 4 and 5. And then the glass eye changes from 7 to 8, and then in 9, it becomes the fixed flex. So the 7 and 8 are referred to as the reyflex, and then 8 is the fixed flex. So that's how they've repaired it, and it has that new clamp. So I started off with A New Hope. The best, easiest, no build requirement replicas to get are the Hasbro and Master Replica Force Effects sabers, which is what this is. It's less than 11 inches long, so it's a little short. Or actually might be a little long. I don't remember how long an actual Graflex is, but it looks stumpy because it's fatter than a Graflex. It's a little wider. The handles, specifically, are not the same size as some of the other replicas. So is it accurate? I do not know. I didn't measure what the vintage is supposed to have. But I like it that it's fatter because I'm bigger than Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is about 5'7". I'm about 6'2". And I outweigh him by probably close to 100 pounds. So I like having a bigger, thicker saber because it looks a little more natural in my hand. I also have very wide hands, guitar player hands. So I really like having a bigger saber. It just looks better. That's why I like my Savi's Workshop saber, because it's so big. It looks appropriate in my hand size. Now, I have made some changes to this. So, first of all, if you get one of these, I think these are great. Now, this is the version that had the removable blade. That's a little harder to find. And finding them empty is really hard. But I managed to come across one, and I picked it up extremely cheap. Or I might even have traded for this one. I had 2 at one point. I don't remember if this is the one I bought or traded. But it's got the 7. It's got a removable back with a D-ring. The D-ring is super tiny, which is not accurate. But I like it because it has the logo and everything on it. But if you want to replace this screws out, and you can just replace that. It has the glass eye, but it has this extra housing around the glass eye, which is not accurate. It's got the 2 little hex guys, little bobs in there from the flash gun, the original flash gun, which is correct. It does have what appears to be, or at least the illusion of, a 2-piece set around the emitter, which is cool. And it does have a gap in here where the light would show through, like you've seen in the recent films. But the bunny ears, which are these, do not connect all the way around. Now, the bunny ears and this are not the same material. These have a chrome finish. These have a chrome finish. This is a plastic piece. These are metal, but they have a coating over them. They might be plastic, actually, but they feel metal. And they are not accurate to proper bunny ear size. So there are some sacrifices you make, but it does have, the tab is a separate set of pieces. It does include the beer tab and an activation switch, which is removable. Now, I have replaced the clamp on this metal piece with an actual replica clamp. This one's from the Graflex shop. But because it's a little fatter, I had to modify it a little bit. I did preserve their bubble strip, but this is a working clamp. And it is on the correct side. So if you want to do an episode 4, I do actually really like the Force Effects for their look. If you want to buy a Romans or you want to buy a Graflex shop, to build the thing in its entirety, it's like a $200 investment. This was less than $80 of an investment for me if you include the clamp. So pretty cheap. And for something that just sits around my house and comes out when I want to do a photo shoot or something, worth it. So that's why I like the Hasbro and the Master Replicas Force Effects and the Black Series. Same thing. You just take the blade out. This, kind of a cool thing about the removable, you can see that pin through it. The reason I like that is because I have a bunch of modded dueling blades and stuff hanging around. And I can actually reattach them. And then I have, I just stepped on pages. That's okay. And then, you have plenty of mobility and you can whack the shit out of it. So I enjoy having the ability to throw some blades in there. This was actually harvested from a Mace Windu, this blade. So those Force Effects blades are all universal size, so if you have one that sticks, you could just keep ripping these things apart and painting the inside, and you have stunt blades galore. So that's another reason I like having one of these, because if you're just going to a con or a movie or something, they get a little wonky if you bring the light up stuff, but sometimes just the standard piece of plastic in there works. Now, for all you people who like the newer shit, new series, everything's expensive. There aren't a ton of replicas out there. There is a Black Series Rey, $300 online if you find one. And it's great, but it's from Last Jedi. So if you want a reyflex, that's the way to go. Unfortunately, they're not sold in stores currently, and the people who have them aren't selling them, and when they do, they're overpriced. So you're kind of screwed on that front. What's cool is that there's an alternative, and I like this. Well, you can get a resin cast and use tape and paint it yourself and use alclad metal and all that. You can do the 3D print. I don't do the 3D print. Print lines kill it for me. It's not a real prop. If it's got print lines, you have to do a good job of cleaning it up and using it proper. And even for me, a 3D print by itself isn't good enough. You have to cast it and use a much better material, do a cold cast aluminum or something. I just don't like using a straight up 3D print if I can avoid it. There are resin 3D printers, and those are great quality replicas right off the print, but they're fucking expensive because the material is so expensive. Plus, you have to cure it, and it's a big pain in the ass. But if done right, they look great. But what happens if you have a budget of like $20 and you want a Rey? What are you going to do? Well, guess what? You can. There was a game that was released, Jedi Challenge. It was an augmented reality Jedi training thing, and it came out in two versions, a Rey and a Kylo. Two lightsaber controllers, and you put on a headset and you do your thing. It was not wildly popular. I don't know why. It was kind of fun. People are selling them dirt cheap. You could still buy them in stores for about $80 or $90, functional. You could buy the controller of Rey's online for about $20. And I picked one up. Actually, I traded for this one, to be perfectly honest, because I am that cheap. But what I did was I pulled out the red button. There's a screw in there. I unscrewed it, pulled out this housing, took the white nub, there's a white nub, plastic nub that comes on it, took that out, put it back in, screwed it back together, and now it looks just like a lightsaber. And still works. So it kind of works like a flashlight. And I could put one of those stunt blades in here if I modify it right and have myself a blade. So that's great. First things first, this is plastic. This is not metal, but it looks metal, which I like. It's chrome finish, it's chrome plated, and it's shiny as fuck. If you compare the two, look at how shiny that one is. That looks great. Now, there's no seams, which I really can't stress how important that is. Seams kill a metal replica. So if it's supposed to look metal, it cannot have a seam on it. So this is one piece of tubing here, one piece of tubing for the clamp, and one piece of tubing for the piece. It's got 6 pieces. It's got 6 rivets, so it is accurate to that. Has a much wider D-ring and a nice concave clamp here, which is great. And the activation box does have 13 bits, which it's supposed to have, so it is a very good clamp card. The glass eye does not have that extra housing, so that's not too shabby. And the activation switch looks pretty good. It's got the beer tab, and it's got a molded in tab here, which kind of sucks, but it's okay. It's got the holes, got the bunny ears. It's got the little guys. You can see them with the hex pieces in there. It does not have the brass backing on the upper piece. That you'll have to add. Easy add. Or you can go in with a gold pen and just draw the fucking thing. So very easy to mod this and make this look really good. This is light. It clips on your belt and hangs light. It's actually lighter than this hollow metal one. And as you can see, the grips are very much longer. This is actually 11 inches. This is just shy of. It's thinner. The profile on the T-Tracks is much lower. These are also squishy and comfortable. they're also set into the piece. There's cutaways that these sit in, so it doesn't just sit on the surface. Very, very comfortable. I guess they have to be. It's a controller. But these T-Tracks have rounded edges. These are squared off. So overall, for 20 bucks to do a reyflex, that's pretty fucking phenomenal. And you could go into any Best Buy or Walmart now and see these on display. If you get your hands on one of the Kylos, I'm sure they're just as good. I would get my hands on one if anybody ever sold it, but the fact that nobody's selling it tells me it's pretty good. So this is a really great New Hope. A quick mod was take apart the activation box, rip it apart, and put on a new clamp. Only mod to this one is take the white piece out. And it's great. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, who cares? It's just hanging on your belt. But these things display really nice. If you want a fix flex, you can't do it. But you can cheat. Cut off this piece here. And now you'll have a gaping hole here. Take some aluminum tape. Cover this strip, cover that strip. It's going to be 13, not 6, so the card's going to be too fat. Can't change that. Get yourself a piece of laminated cardstock and cover it with aluminum tape. Cut it to that tapered style so that it V's in and has a strip, and make the strip as wide as this section here. You have to add rivets, but that's easy to do. And just sort of cover that with a strip of brown leather. It will simulate the look of the fix flex. Pretty good. It's not going to have the accurate mounting clip here. They changed one of the grips in episode 9 to have like a Kylo style belt clip. So that means no D-ring or anything back here either. You'd have to take all that off. But if you're just going for a basic Ben Solo look, that'll do the fix flex pretty easily. But I think this is worth it just the way it is. Like I said, when you compare the two side by side, my really only big con is that this is one single piece. It doesn't have that look like the bunny ears wrap around it. I may put an additional strip of metal in and around this to accommodate that. So there's little mods you might make. You could even drill a hole in this and put a real set of bunny ears in if you wanted to. I just don't see what the point would be. But if you put them side by side, they have a great look. The clamps do have... Now, my clamp may be upside down, because you notice where this one is versus where mine is. That's one of those things that the Graflex addicts go fucking nuts over. Your clamp hole is in the wrong spot. You fucking ruined it. I don't care. And the grips and the D-rings. So I think either one of these is a good option. Like I said, you can find one of these guys empty and done with by someone who upgraded less than $100. Find one of these on Facebook Marketplace for less than $30. Worth it. Hopefully you guys have happy Graflexing. Hopefully, if you guys find a really cool way to modify one of these into a fix flex, hit me up. Let me know. I'd like to see. I'm going to go take cold medication. Have a good night.